A very good evening to one and all, and a warm welcome to the In-Service Skills Enhancement Program presented by VIDYADAAN Foundation. I'm Dr. Mayuri, and I'm here to take you through the session. To begin with, I would like to introduce VIDYADAAN to the ones who aren't aware of this organization. VIDYADAAN Foundation is a transformative non-profit organization. It is dedicated to empowering underprivileged children, youth, and women through the power of education with an unwavering commitment to fostering a brighter future. VIDYADAAN Foundation is at the forefront of providing high-quality education in India, thereby enabling disadvantaged children to unlock their potential. To enhance the quality of education, it also conducts teachers training programs. In the past, under the In-Service Skills Enhancement Program, which is ISEP, we take pride when we say that we have successfully trained over more than 16,000 teachers in India and abroad. We all know that the National Education Policy emphasizes on continuous professional development, which is CPT, of educators. Each teacher is expected to participate in at least 50 hours of CPT opportunities every year. Now we have resumed that In-Service Skills Enhancement Program, popularly called as ISEP, and it is going to be an ongoing one. We shall have a session every Saturday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. And our speakers will be eminent educators who will share their expertise with us on various relevant and pressing topics for us as educators. Point to be noted is that educators who successfully attend the program will be receiving a valid e-certificate which states you have completed 1 hour of training. I will briefly inform you of the process here. After the presentation of the speaker, we will be sharing a questionnaire that will be based on today's content. The person who gets a score of 7 is eligible for the e-certificate. Please note, the Google form link has to be filled before leaving the meeting. In case you want the e-certificate, you will have to pay a small fee of ₹100 and you will receive your e-certificate via WhatsApp within 7 working days. Coming to the session, I would like to introduce our speaker to all. Our expert today is Miss Manjusha Muraleedharan, a seasoned educator with postgraduate degree in English literature and public administration. Madam currently serves as the academic lead ISC at Lekola Chempaka Silver Rocks, Trivandrum. My role as an education resources specialist in teaching teachers training, focusing on enhancing teaching methodology, fostering inclusive learning environments, and driving educational transformation is what ma'am says. She has been internationally recognized by Center and the British Council and awarded for excellence in teaching in ICSE and ISC schools. Additionally, she has successfully administered global assessments like IBT, ASSET, and CAT. Ma'am had led impactful professional development initiatives for educators across diverse platforms. We all know that when a teacher is teaching, it is irrespective of the board she is in. She is a teacher, remains a teacher, will always be addressed as a teacher. Dear viewers, in case you have some very important questions related to the topic, you can put it on the chat and we shall try to address them if time permits. I now request Madam to kindly begin with your session, which we all are eagerly waiting for. Over to you, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayuri ma'am. Good evening, all. Thank you so much, Mayuri ma'am, for the warm welcome. And I would also like to thank Vidyadan for this platform and for this opportunity to interact with the educators all around. And shall we begin, ma'am? Shall we move on
Yes,
to
yes.
the session? Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so dear teachers, let us have a very fruitful 1 hour ahead of us. And as you are aware, today we'll be discussing on global citizenship. And let us figure out different strategies on how we could help our learners evolve into global citizens. Let me just share the screen. All right. So let us begin our interactive session. As ma'am has already mentioned, the topic of discussion today is building a global citizen. Now, before we begin, let me just ask each one of you just to define a global citizen. What, according to me, is a global citizen? Let us just give it a thought. It does not have a specific limit of words. As educators, we are well versed with the different methodologies of presenting a particular concept to our learners. And when I say our learners, I do not uh, focus on a particular criteria or group of learners. We know in a classroom of 30 to 40 students, or maybe around 50 students, we have got diverse kinds of learners, isn't it? So, how do we make each one of our students a global citizen? Let us figure that out. Now, before we proceed, as you see here, this is just one of the definitions of a global citizen. So, what can we make out from these words? We can understand that we identify ourselves as a global citizen when we find a space for ourselves in this world community. And please note the word world community. There is no discrimination, there is no distinction, and there is no hindrance for one's progress. And how do we turn out to be a successful global citizen? Yes, when we are able to provide to the needs of this community, when we are a part of striving for this community's values and perspectives. As educators, we have been trained, we have been through a number of training process, and we have sharpened our skills. Now, are we ready for this challenge? Now, why do I call this a challenge? Because irrespective of our diverse backgrounds, irrespective of the subjects that we teach, irrespective of the varied age groups of students that we deal with every day, this is indeed a challenge. When it comes to the time constraints, when it comes to dealing with each one of our learner, how do we bring in the essentials that are required for a citizen? And then come the global citizen. Moving on, as we are into the national education policy in different areas of our teaching learning process, the global citizenship education is already a focus. I'm sure many of us are aware of it, and many of us are working on inculcating the same in our daily lessons. Let us have a quick look through. As per the NEP 2020, GCED, or Global Citizenship Education, aims to develop knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes, understand and appreciate diverse cultures, foster empathy, promote global awareness and responsibility. I'm sure these are the core areas that we work on, irrespective of our subject, on a daily basis. Now, how do we play a vital role into bringing these expectations into our classroom? As we know, our classroom is expected to be a lab for exploration. It is not a worksheet factory. On a daily basis, maybe an hour of class or maybe a 40-minute class. We have our lesson plans, we have our plan for meeting the diverse needs. Now, where do we bring in the global perspective? Four core areas or four aspects that we have to focus on: fostering global citizenship, through cultural understanding and cooperation, social responsibility, empathy development, and active participation. Now, let me just remind you, dear educators, this is nothing new. It has just been revamped. We just have to turn our vision a bit to the wider perspective so that we can bring in these four aspects in our daily lessons. It is possible in all the subjects, in all the grades, in all age groups. So, how do we bring these concepts in? It is not the focus of teaching our learners the definitions or giving them some examples. The facilitator will take the back seat here, right? We are aware of the various methodologies that we have been implementing in our daily lessons, where we bring in our students to the active mode. But I hope you two would agree, or I hope you might have noticed, these days there's something missing in our learner. And those two core points are social responsibility and empathy. We have to focus on these minute areas so that we can bring in their awareness. Let us move on to different aspects. And these are just minute areas where we could actually contribute. There are no confinement as to these are the rules to be followed. Each one of us can bring in our own innovations as we bring in this concept. And that is exactly the challenge. As you see here, the critical part of learning when it comes to 21st century are these core points, many of which might be a challenge for us to deal with. Now let us focus on each one of them. As you see here, there are different definitions for the requirements of 21st century learning, but I feel these points that you see here, which have been proposed by Sean Arnold, an educationist, a special educator, these can be actually brought into each one of our subjects. The 7 C's, the 3 R's, and the 3 M's. Right? We have been talking about collaboration. We have been working on critical thinking, communication, creativity. Have you ever thought about a concept or a learning process that is accessible to everyone equally? How can we keep motivating our students to be resilient, to be risk takers? How many times have we uh, actually been able to reach out our students to reflect on their daily performance? So we must give it a thought. How is it possible on a daily basis? And of course, these are instant actions and reactions. There are limitations to the planning part. The execution is that all matter, isn't it? Now, each one of us will have many experiences to share when we focus on each of these points here. We might come across some on-spot creativity by our learner. We might get excellent responses from students who might have taken a back seat earlier. So every concept can be brought out into a very lively manner if we as educators keep in our mind the possibilities of every concept that can be made into an enjoyable learning process. So as the educationist has put forward, these area, the 7 C's, 3 R's, and 3 M's will be helpful in bringing out the concept of global citizenship. We might have also tried out different ways we could include the multiple intelligences in our daily lesson. And I'm sure many of us might have improvised the concept according to our needs. Similarly, we can actually include these in our lesson. There are different approaches, and based on your subjects, you can plan accordingly. It is not possible to bring in all these in a single day's lesson. It's not possible. But one step at a time, we must say that we have actually introduced these concepts to our students. Another crucial point to note as educators of the 21st century is how we redefine failure. On a daily basis, we come across a number of disheartening information, disheartening instances where failure turned out to trigger the worst in our children. So this is something that we have to prepare our children for. This is the first step of turning them into global citizens. We have also come across a number of eminent personalities sharing their opinions, sharing their experiences, and how each failure has turned them out into responsible and successful individuals from the very lower grades, from the very first day in school or kindergarten. Every child should have this notion that I'm here to learn, I'm here to improve myself. So the redefining failure process should start from the very first day. I'm sure many of you will have a number of experiences to share, a number of suggestions that you have had all these while, isn't it? A comparison is actually something that triggers the thought of failing. As educators, we have to see that we bring in the social emotional learning technique into our daily lesson. Nothing is an end. We have to teach our children to understand and accept the fact that, okay, I failed today. Why don't I try it out tomorrow? I understand this will not work out. Why not I think about a different way? If plan A does not work out, I have plan B. If that too does not work out, I'll think about plan C. So there's nothing called game over. It's always try again. So the first mindset that our children should have is that there is nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear about failure. Moving on, we always hear about motivation, isn't it? We motivate our students. I'm sure many of us listen to motivational speeches or podcasts and we feel enlightened. Now, there's a slight difference in motivating our students. Of course, we do get the attention of our children by telling them or maybe by promising them rewards at the end of a particular task. That, of course, is an accepted mode of motivating our learners. But have we ever thought about the long-lasting impact? If not, it's high time that we start, isn't it? As you can see here, this is just a brief demonstration of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. We must always bear in mind that whatever task is being initiated, it should have a long-lasting effect. It should have a passionate approach from the student's end. Why should I be doing this? Why should I be learning this concept? Is it just for scoring good grades in the examination? Is it just to stand first in class? Not exactly. This is for me to learn. Going ahead, I will be able to include this in my real life instances. So when it comes to motivation, we as adults, we as educators must focus on bringing in their students' attention toward intrinsic motivation. The appropriate feedback, guidance to self-reflection, initiation of challenges, making them understand their presence and their essence in the social setting, help them clear out their goals, and identifying the meaning of each learner. When I say that meaning of each learner, we know that we have got a number of children who might not fare well in their studies, but they're actually good in all the projects. They're actually good in exhibitions. So make them understand that, yes, I can do it. And slowly take them one step ahead. One time, one activity, the next time we'll think about the next. So do not be overwhelmed or do not be pressurized, isn't it? So rather than telling them, okay, you get a chocolate if you finish the homework, to lower grade students, of course, they'll be happy. And we are also happy to see them complete the task. But at the end of the day, we must remember that we might be helping them out rather than misleading them. So, dear educators, when it comes to motivation, please shift ourselves to the intrinsic mode rather than the short-lived extrinsic mode. These will help us bring in the child's responsible nature. He or she will be able to identify that, yes, I am responsible for my society's development. I am responsible for this particular action. And they can also develop empathy when they start thinking about their neighbors, when they start thinking about the person opposite to them, rather than being self-centered. So we are slowly taking them forward to the aspect of being successful global citizens. Now, the Harvard University has actually worked on a number of strategies. They have worked on, in fact, they are working on a number of projects where they could inculcate the essentials of global citizenship. I have just included here a couple of strategies, many of which we have been actually practicing in our classrooms, even though we might not term them in a similar way. I'm sure many of us begin our daily lessons with the warm-up activities or by introducing a particular topic. That specific part of our teaching learning process is what is called making learning visible. We can use a number of aids. We can use a number of online videos. We could actually involve our students for the lesson introduction, and the children actually see the essence of learning. They actually see the vision. It becomes visible to them rather than the teacher simply standing and dictating out or simply speaking out. Right, there will be equal participation. There will be active participation. I hope you remember the core concept. Number 4, active participation. Teaching for understanding. And of course, we know the time constraints that we are pressurized with, isn't it? Yes, I do admit that. But when we choose to teach, it should be for the long-lasting understanding of the child. The child should wander over, think, look around, observe, and then try to connect with the concepts. And I'm sure many of us have already been inculcating this visible thinking process, right? We make sure that once a lesson is taught, the child should be able to work more on this particular content, be it any subject, science, social science, languages, math. Children should be able to collaborate. Children should be able to bring out the creative part. Assign them projects, let them work together, and let them figure out the solution. Learning outside in is, of course, I'm sure that many of us have been involved in excursions, study trips, right? Where they can actually experience and then learn rather than being prompted. Whenever we bring in social science classes, we have seen our social science teachers trying real hard to make the children understand the different cultures, worldwide cultures. So now the need of the hour is a culturally responsive teaching. We need not limit ourselves within our locality. We need not limit ourselves with the examples taken from our national level. Why not we expose our children to the international level of the problem? Remember, so we must try to bring in these concepts in our lesson. It is not essential that we must prompt word by word to our students. It can be assigned as a group activity. It can be assigned as an individual assignment. And the time period that the child takes to bring out what he or she has actually found out through the study or the research is exactly what is expected in being a global citizen. The curiosity, the awareness, the passion to figure out things. And of course, digital literacy is nothing new to us. We all are really good techies these days, isn't it? We know how to handle technology in our classrooms. This is nothing new. Moreover, this has actually turned out to be a challenge for our teachers because we deal with a section of students who are easily exposed to technology. So in order to catch up with our students, we will have to upskill ourselves. And the remaining 3, as you see here, student-led initiatives, collaborative projects, problem-based learning. These have been our regular approaches in our classrooms, in our subjects, isn't it? But how do we make it a bit more interesting? That depends on each one of us. How do we bring in a concept? How do we make our learners receive what we have planned for them? And in the long run, we should not always miss out on those section of students who might not be as enthusiastic. Right, we might have problems with bringing in all our students equally into this lesson. For instance, when I teach poetry, when I teach drama, I find many students not interested in this particular drama or poetry. Now, how can I bring in their attention? Of course, assign them work, assign them projects. Before we actually introduce the poem or the short story or the drama, for instance, assign them tasks where they could actually work on the theme that is being dealt with. And as we introduce this lesson, or as I introduce this lesson, we have a kind of a conversation. And they pitch in with their finding. And finally, we are led to the essential matter or the expected concept. So all these interactions actually help them understand, broaden their vision. How or why should I be a part of this? It's just like an opening up for more knowledge. As I have already mentioned, Project Zero by the Harvard University is actually helpful to each one of us as educators. And I would actually request all of you to take time out and do a bit of research on Project Zero. And I'm sure you will find resources that would actually help you out in your daily lesson. These are actually some of the mentioned strategies. Now, I would request all of you to take a moment and let's explore a quick draw. Now, why should we do this? As we know, as teachers, the main purpose of being a teacher is to communicate, isn't it? How do we know that our students are able to understand what we say? On the other hand, how do we know that we are able to understand our students? So this is actually a test. Quick draw helps us to understand how far we are successful as educators. I'm sure many of you might be trying this out. Please do take the time out to try quick draw. We'll be given an instruction and just see how far you are able to follow the instruction. And once you come out of the drawing, if it being received the way you want to, it's fun and equally thought-provoking. So once we try this out, we can understand the missing links. Why isn't he or she able to understand what I have said? I've been repeating this for a number of times. Why don't you listen carefully? So now we understand it's not just the telling part or the listening part that matters. It is active communication and active listening and equal participation. I'm sure many of you might have tried this out. If not, others, please do take time out to try this out once in a while so that we could get a grip of ourselves. How can we improve our communication? And how can we as educators improve our listening? Let us move on. Now here lies the trick. Why should we bring in the global citizenship concept into our classroom? Or how do we guide our children towards this concept? After each lesson or after each discussion, our student should be able to answer the three whys. These three whys that you see here is actually the global thinking routine. Why might this matter to me? Why might it matter to people around me? Why might it matter to the world? If our children are able to understand and answer these three whys, they are on the right track toward global citizenship. There is another aspect towards the understanding or the global thinking routine, which is how else and why. We must actually try this out in our daily lessons. Once we are done with a small part of our lesson, or maybe even a partial part of our concept, we must try to make them respond. What do I want to say? And the child would reply, what I want to say is, and share their understanding or share their suggestions, if any. When it comes to the second question, how else can I say this and why? That is actually where critical thinking happens, and that is actually where active participation takes place. The child is open and receptive of knowledge. It is not simply rote learning. It is not confined within a particular textbook or curriculum. And this is how we expose our students to the open world, to the global scenario. And educators, please do note the three why and how else and why, the global thinking routine. And I'm sure that once we start connecting these strategies into our daily lessons, it is not a Herculean task for our children to grab the concept. And we can see day by day how our learners evolve into global citizens. Please do note the point. There are three aspects as to how do we analyze our performance, analyze our progress in the global citizenship concept. Once in a while, there is no harm in getting into a conversation with our children and make them clear about the need of the hour. We should have a broad vision, remove ourselves from the narrow-minded perspective, and think about the multiple possibilities, the multiple cultures, and how do they perceive each one of these aspects? How do they participate? How can they make a difference? It's easily said than done, I admit, but this is exactly what we need. As we have seen a number of improvisations in our syllabus, right? In the portions that we have been teaching all these years. All of a sudden, it has changed. No, it is not all of a sudden. It is a slow process. As we are being brought into this change one by one, we should start bringing in us learners. Change is something that is always permanent, isn't it? It might be difficult to accept it all at once, but one step at a time. There's no harm in making them understand that time is changing. Change is the demand. We have to revamp ourselves. And finally, how do we as educators deepen our own global competence as we learn to teach about with and for the world? As I have already mentioned, we are dealing with a section of children who are exposed to the outer world, who are technologically far more intelligent than the educators at times. So how do we keep up with the pace? We have the solution. We have to upskill. We have to ponder over. We have to research on the various aspects and make sure that we are actually delivering with purpose. There are a number of resources as to how we could bring in the globally competent individual. Vanessa Massiller and Arthur Jackson have actually brought out a book named Global Competency. And they focus on these aspects that you see here. They have split it up into 5 different concepts. And of course, we have actually included disciplinary and interdisciplinary study in our lessons, isn't it? And we have to bring in, or we have to guide our learners into investigating newer areas, recognizing the possibilities, and finally making them take action, communicate ideas, bring them out from being self-centered. As we know the varied types of learners that we have in our classes, it is not an easy task. But one step at a time, when we focus, we can actually make them participate and bring out the essential that is being expected. When they begin to recognize the possibilities, we can see the change in their interest. They start collaborating in the work. They start communicating and they critically bring out the different aspects which might have been ignored previously. And the best solution to all this is interdisciplinary study. The subjects could be brought in as per the need of the lessons, and the teachers and the students could work in together. And there brings in the life of knowledge, the expansion of knowledge. The global thinking routine, as you see here, can be taken out as per the subject requirement, as per our lesson. And in our daily lesson plans, I would say, if we start including one of these aspects at a regular basis, we can actually figure out the change in our class. And the way our students think, the way they discuss about a given topic, it all matters. I hope we shall begin implementing the thinking routines one by one, as you see here. It's quite simple. And as we read through these definitions now, I'm sure many of you will have this thought cross your mind that I have already done this. I have actually done this yesterday. Oh, I was planning to do this on Monday, right? So this is not something new. It is just the approach that has to be redesigned. It is the approach that has to be revamped. But please do take these in and master the thinking routine so that we could actually facilitate our learners and make them understand the requirement or the need for the global thinking part. We must start thinking outside, isn't it? Rather than keeping ourselves safe in our comfort zone. There's no progress when we are in your comfort zone, isn't it? So we should always make sure that our children, our students are equally participating. They are equally receptive of the global environment. Please do take a minute to wonder about this picture. Many of us might have already come across this image, and some of us might have actually used this in our classroom projects. Now, what do we see? The vision is quite evident, isn't it? What are the first thoughts that cross our mind when we see this image? What happens if we just assign this image as a project to our students? Just give them the image and ask them to research on it. I'm sure they will be interested to figure out the details or the background behind this image, isn't it? So this is just an example of how to expand their thinking processes. The 7 C's, the 3 R's, the 3 M's is all involved in this one image. And I'm sure as educators, we have our own creative approaches. And when we bring in our ideas along with the strategies, the classroom is a wonderful place. This is just an example. And I'm sure that even we could do a bit of research on this picture, isn't it? On this photograph, actually, this was taken in the year 2004 by an eminent photographer. I would request all of you to do a bit of research. And I'm sure that even you could make use of this image in your classroom in any context. Please do try this out. It's a very challenging image, a very disturbing one too, I agree. We could easily figure out the inequality in the society, isn't it? That is the first thought that would come up, and obviously that will be the first response given by our students. So please do ponder over this image. See, think, and wonder, right? Now, there's another strategy to this. We could actually make our students interact or write down what did I think about it before my research and what I think about it after my research. So there comes in critical thinking and acceptance, cooperation. When we share images or when we actually give them research based on pictures or visuals, we could actually make use of these questions. We could give them guidelines and also see that no sentiments are hurt. We should always guide our students to refrain from judgment. It should always be a suggestion. It should always be receptiveness. We could also question them about the beauty and the technique behind each image, the beauty and the truth. What is the beauty behind this picture? We'll have a number of responses. What is the truth behind this picture? Again, we'll have a number of responses. Two crucial questions. Does the beauty actually reveal the truth? Does the beauty actually conceal the truth? Aren't we thinking about it? This is exactly what a global citizen is expected to do. Act, make wise decisions, bring in visible changes in the society. I would say the best references for all of us, irrespective of our subject, irrespective of our teaching background, the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, goal number 4, education and global citizenship. It really matters. And as educators of the 21st century, why don't we just sharpen our skills and bring in these expectations into our classrooms? Real life instances. Why don't we expose our children outside the textbook? Make them understand, make them see, make them think, or make them wonder. And finally, make them act. We can see a number of innovative solutions coming forth, and we could also see active participation of all our learners, irrespective of the category that they have been included into. We should always focus on inclusive education, isn't it? No learners should be left behind. We cannot assess a child based on a standardized test. All these are actual facts. But how far have we been successful? We have to figure that out, isn't it? It is up to each one of us to figure out the possible solutions to the problems that we face on a daily basis and also see that this is actually implemented. Once we complete a specific time period, a specific academic session, we must be able to say that, yes, I did it. I was able to guide my students to find a better place. I was able to guide my students into the concept of global citizenship. It is not happening overnight. It is a lifetime process. It's a lifetime experience for each one of us as educators, equivalent to our learners. We learn something new with each of our students, isn't it? So why don't we try this out? Why don't we build a global citizen? So let us broaden our horizons one step at a time. I hope I've been able to initiate a thinking process. And I'm sure that many of our educators present here would actually agree to this fact that, yes, I have been doing this. I need to sharpen it a bit, right? As I have already mentioned. The resources of Project Zero and the Global Competency book will actually be a guide to all of us. And I'm sure that each one of us will be impactful educators, bringing out a number of global citizens as expected by the SDG. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. If there are questions from the audience, we would be requesting you to respond.
Yes, sure, ma'am.
We'll just check in. I think there is no question. Then anyways, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am Manjusha. Am I right in announcing your name?
Yes, ma'am. Manjusha. Manjusha.
Manjusha, Muraleedharan. It was really insightful. And in fact, I also got a lot of knowledge from your presentation. And the main thing which was really inspiring were the photographs which you have inserted. And that beautiful photograph of, I think, Mumbai, Maharashtra. Can you just tell that where exactly it is that location?
Ma'am, the location is Sao Paulo. Sao Paulo.
Okay.
And it is similar to many of our metropolitan cities.
Yeah, I thought it's Maharashtra.
Yes. This is how
But
we
then
connect. This is how we connect, ma'am.
yes,
Yes.
but it gave a lot of foresight after seeing that. Anyways, your session was very insightful, and I'm sure we all have valuable takeaways. The questionnaire which you have put are more important because these kind of questions do not come at times in the mind of teachers. These will be very helpful. And I hope my teachers, audience have noted down the various questions you have inserted while you were taking up your session. And well, participants are requested not to leave the meeting. I request them. I hope they have just filled in the questionnaire, which was sent in the form of a link. Please fill it in the form and make your payments as per your requirement of the certificate. In case you don't receive your certificates, kindly get back to us because we're expecting to do so within 7 working days. But there are a few things which you need to mention very clearly: your name, school name, topic of the session, your WhatsApp number, and the session number, because it's going to be very useful. And the date is also very important. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. See you all
Thank you
next
so much.
Saturday, same time. And we will be definitely wishing you all a very, very happy Diwali. Though you will be just joining us during that period, we expect the same number of audience turning up in our next session. Till then, goodbye.